Okay, so we're doing 2 Kings. Looks like she's had it. Chapter 8. Okay, let me turn there with y'all.
Guys, remember the story from last Sunday? It's pretty intense. Sam and Paul taught it. You guys remember? It was a little bit scary.
Can you pronounce Cumberland?
Okay, the reason the lady in this story is in the condition she's in is because of the story from last week. So, does anyone remember the story last week? It was pretty crazy. So, there was basically starvation happening because there was armies trying to attack Israel, and so they blocked their whole city off so no one could come in or go out. And because of that, there was no, it's kind of like how COVID has caused it to be these days. We don't get shipments from other countries as many because we're trying to stay safe.
They couldn't get
germs.
Food.
Well, they were keeping their walls of their city shut so the enemy couldn't attack them and kill them all. And so they had shut all their things off. So after they ran out of food and water in the city, there was nothing left. And they were all just like stuck inside the walls of their city.
Did they eat?
Either
Madison?
if they went outside the city, the army was going to get them. And so
Remember?
they stayed inside.
Yeah. He remembers. Logan said that. Say it again. What
they ate duck poop and donkey heads.
Yep.
They ate what they could find so they could survive. And that was donkey heads, dove poop.
Yep. And then
yeah, they were eating any meat they could find or anything that was going to
do you
provide
remember
protein or
what else?
nutrition for their bodies.
What else happened, Logan?
I think
you remember?
they did.
That what
I think
other
there's
thing
more
did they eat?
nutrients in the head.
Or they tried to eat? The parents.
I think they did. They ate everything.
Yes. Okay, hold on.
Parents tried to eat their own children.
Okay, everybody hear that?
Ooh, that's intense.
Say it again, Logan.
The parents tried to eat their own children.
That's
Isn't
how
that
hungry
crazy?
they were.
That's how hungry they were.
They got so hungry that they were actually eating other people.
And the king heard about that,
It's a true
and
story.
he was so stressed out that he ripped his clothes in
They
anger
hated it.
because he's like,
They were all just trying
why
to
is
survive.
this happening?
It
And
was either they felt like this: they're either going to leave the city and die because the other army is going to kill them, or they're going to try to survive in the city. So they were doing anything they could do to live, and that's what they were doing.
and you know what happened? God, there was 4 people that were really sick, and they weren't really, like, people would push them away from them because they didn't want to get sick, so they didn't go near
They had
them.
leprosy.
They had
Like Naaman
leprosy,
had.
and leprosy
But they all had
is
it.
a disease that eats your skin, and people's bones are showing,
And
and
it was
it's
like
really
5
painful,
guys.
and they have sores everywhere on their body. So these guys, they're like, well, we're gonna die either way, so let's just go and see if maybe we can be slaves to this army, this other opposing army, and maybe we'll get some food because we're hungry. So they left, and you know what God did? He made the lepers, because they had some chains on and different cloths and stuff, he made them sound like a huge army coming. And so when they were walking,
God can do that.
that was funny. Anyways, they were walking, and the army that was outside of the walls thought they heard another army coming, and they freaked out because they weren't prepared, and they ran. And the lepers came, and there was an empty camp, and tons of food, tons of wealth left behind. Lepers, which were the people that were sick.
With his nose falling off and
So,
everything.
The 4
There was
people
like
that were
4
sick.
lepers or 5 lepers or
Yeah.
something.
And Jesus healed many people that had that
was
sickness.
in a certain state of
Yes.
like condition of her life, and this is why it was because of this big battle that took place. The army runs
You're
away.
Did they tell their city or did they?
Yeah, the lepers came back and said, "Hey, we found this huge city. All the army left. It's empty. You guys can open the doors now and get food." And one guy said, "I don't believe it." And he said, "If you don't believe it, because the prophet told him that this was going to happen." And the guy, right-hand man of the king, said, "I don't believe that." He said, "If you don't believe it, then you're not going to have it." And so, sure enough, the next day, the lepers came back and said, "Listen to us." All the guys, the army up on the walls. Listen to us. He said, the battle's over. Our army that was going to attack us is gone. And they left all the food and all their supplies behind for us to take. And so they opened the doors to the city, and everybody was just like ravenously hungry, like monsters,
Can you
basically.
imagine?
So they're running out of the city to go find the food, and the one guy that was in charge, that was
Got
right
trampled and
hand,
died.
right hand to the king,
Wow.
like the prophet Isaiah said, he said, fine, you won't have it then if you don't want to believe that. And everybody that was running out of the city, that guy was standing there at the gate, and they trampled him
Whoa.
because he didn't believe what God
Whoa.
said.
So he didn't get anything?
He didn't get
He
anything.
died.
He died,
He died by
actually,
being
because he didn't believe what God said.
Because everybody was so hungry. I mean, they were eating poop. It's like you're eating poop,
They
and
were-
then you realize,
That changes your
oh,
mindset.
there's
you go,
food out there.
you go a little bit crazy when you're trying to
Yeah.
survive.
So-
So that's how they were.
They went from poop
And so,
to delicious
anyways,
bread.
all that
and food.
happened, which
And then
means
what happened after that?
the lady.
They survived.
That's this story now.
So yes, okay. So back to this. Now we're reading. Everybody look down at your thing. Okay. Chapter 8, verse 1. Then, and I have a different version, so it may sound a little. Then Elisha spoke to the woman whose son he had restored to life.
Okay.
So then Elisha spoke to the woman, okay, and he said, "Arise, meaning get up, and go to your household, and stay there. For whosoever can't sojourn, we should stay there.
That means go on a trip.
For the Lord has called for a famine, and it shall also come upon the land 7 years." So this is talking about what happened with the famine. And the woman arose and did what Elisha said. And she went with her household and sojourned in the land where the Philistines for 7 years.
You talk about how the lady, she,
What's this week's creature feature?
it's a slug.
Yeah.
But the lady had a
She
son.
likes slugs.
Remember that lady that had a
Slugs.
son?
She likes snails.
You like snails?
Remember
I
that
like
lady that
it. You don't like the
there was a
creature
lady, she couldn't have a baby, so she
Yes.
was generous and she provided that prophet a room, so he prayed for her and she was able to have a baby. And then when he was older, he got a heat stroke and died. And so Elisha came and lined his mouth up, laid on him with his hands on his hands, face on his face, and breathed on him, and the kid woke up. And so
From death.
that's what happened. And his servant,
The kid's still alive.
that's what they're giving you background
he died,
information on
and
here.
then he came back to
So they're
life.
kind of telling you a little bit of the
Yeah.
story again, and then they're going on because
He's in
you
heaven.
Yes.
need to
Well, in
remember
this
that
story.
part for this to actually
Yes.
make sense.
So, ready? So, verse 2. So, the woman did as the man of God instructed. She took her family and settled in the land of the Philistines for 7 years. So, she went to a different place.
She wasn't during the
She
famine with
wasn't
the crazy
stuck
people.
in the city where the crazy people were. And then, after the famine ended, she returned from the land of the Philistines. And she went to see the king about getting back her house. and
After
land.
all this happened, Elisha had given that king the word that the people were going to bust out of the city and get food. And so he was talking to his servant Naaman, or
Yes,
what's his name?
Naaman.
Not
Or
Naaman.
Gehazi, sorry.
Gehazi. And Gehazi said, yes, and we prayed for this one lady. He was telling him all this cool stuff that happened. We prayed for this one lady, king, and guess what? She got pregnant. And then 9 years later, her son died. And then Elisha came back and laid on him, breathed into him, and he woke back up. And the king was like, this is an amazing story. Well, the lady, she got her land taken because she left for 7 years while all the crazy famine was going on. And then they isolated their city so the army couldn't get them. So she was coming back randomly into the palace and standing in a line trying
Same
to
time.
say, okay, is it my turn next? So she could talk to the king and say, can I please have my land back? Well, that was no coincidence. God is the one that made this happen. Right when the guy was telling the story to the king about this lady, she was the next in line. And he goes, well, that's her right there. And the king's like, no way. And so she actually, because of her generosity, just like the verse we were saying today, she gave to Elisha, she built a room for him, and then that's why he prayed for her to get pregnant. Her son died. He was raised back from the dead. Because of her generosity, she even got her land back after the famine.
Wow.
And so that's
Isn't that awesome?
the entire story in a nutshell, is that when you're generous, God takes care of you. And so she got her land back. What's that? Yes,
No.
but your parents are
Not
coming.
yet. So, okay, so let me ask, based off of what she just said, okay, whose son died? Hers, okay? And then who raised the son from the dead? Elijah. And it was God's power through Elijah. Okay? And then who gave this lady her land back? The king. Okay? And then what was the name of Elijah's servant? It starts with a G. It's Gehazi.
Gehazi. Bless you.
Gehazi.
Sounds like
It's like
he's
Gesundheit. Gehazi.
Gesundheit.
Okay. All right. Good job, y'all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.